There we go. Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for joining the webinar. Today we are looking at the new client onboarding sort of workflow, and in fact a fairly recent revision, if you like, to the template for that flow that people get when they create a glide system. It's one of the templates that hasn't changed a lot over recent years, so this is sort of probably fairly different to what you might see if you use it currently and you haven't done your own thing, or if you were to create a trial system with this template recently. Now it is a template, so if you have a glide system already, which I think everyone in here would do, and you don't do this, you can just ping us a message. We can put this template on your system. Of course, if you already have something set up and you want to incorporate some of these ideas, you'd probably need to just sort of tweak your workflow accordingly. There's no real way to merge a sort of new and old template. Of course, we'd be very happy to help with that. Okay, so let me start by just sort of explaining, for those that haven't seen a new client onboarding flow before, what does this do and what does it not do, I suppose. So it is sort of one of the workflows, just like any other. It's of course an ad hoc flow. So typically this job is going to be created when you have a new client. That can be set to happen automatically, or you might choose to do it manually. It's not, I should say, part of the new client screen. This screen for the time being remains very simple. We have got a revision to this upcoming later in the year, but let's actually go ahead and make a client. I'll just do the obvious one. I have my system set to create a job on my new client workflow system when the client creates. So there it is. The fact that these ones are white mean they're ad hoc. Jobs are generally created as and when you need them, or when a new client creates, or as we'll see today, a flow can create, another job. So here we go. We have our job card. Now, on the face of it, this will look reasonably similar to our old template, in so much as we have the 4 sections. So just to explain what I mean by the 4 sections, you'll probably all be aware that a glide job is based upon a sort of flow chart, a process flow diagram, whatever you would like to call it. And, one of the implications of that is that you can't just take lots of different processes and sort of cram them all into one. Where things are truly independent, even if they're all related to the new client onboarding process, you do need to break them down into their, the independent parts. Now, some people do that in Glide with accounts and CT. They'll view those as 2 separate things. It's not a sort of feature that's otherwise too widely used, but it is used here on the new client flow. And that's because there's so much going on. I always consider, when helping new clients get set up, that new client onboarding is typically the most complicated of the flows we do. So I've got 4 things going on here, as sort of identified by the 4 different colors. Now there's another webinar about a month down the road, because we are currently rebuilding this screen. And one change we've decided to make, although there might be an option there for you to keep it the same, is actually to have just one of these visible at a time, and then you toggle left and right. And we feel that's going to give us a bit more screen real estate to actually sort of dedicate to each part. But for the time being, they are all here. So the 4 bits we have are AML. I mean, that one's, no doubt self-explanatory. Typically, when we get a new client, we're going to want to do those initial checks of identity, risk assessments, etc. That one's really simple. Let's just have a quick glance at the flow for that one. I'm sure lots of our customers make this a bit more glamorous, but for our template, it's getting ID, awaiting ID, completing risk assessment. That's all that's really happening there. We have the professional. Now, as I go through each of these, actually, I'll mention a couple of sort of things you might do with them. So one thing with AML, if you wanted to, you could hide all the others until the AML's done, or you could block all the others with a traffic light until the AML is done. That might look good in a sort of AML compliance sense, or you might find it's practically quite annoying, who knows. But those are a couple of things you can do. I haven't done that on the template. By the way, I think I might have said this earlier, but if you've got any questions, feel free just to ping them in the chat, or, this one won't be too long, so I'll definitely have time left over within our hour. I think it might only take half an hour just to sort of cover off any questions at the end if you haven't done them in the middle. So that's the AML one. Couple of things you can do there to insist on it being done first if that's how you do things. Should also mention that typically practices will then have a more recurring system for the renewal of the AML. You can't really have that here and there because, of course, this is an ad hoc flow, and the annual or 2-yearly or 3-yearly one is a recurring flow. Coming up then to professional clearance, let's have a look at the diagram for this one. So as of course you can change this, but my one is sort of like, do we need it? And I will progress through these on my test job in a moment, but either we need it, or perhaps it's, let's find this one, no previous accountant, or maybe it's a newly incorporated client, which I guess kind of comes under the no previous accountant. If we do, we've kind of got the consent in here, and then we request it, chase it up, get it in, either it's complete, that's coming down here, or we've got missing info. We could have a little chased on there as well, couldn't we? So that's the professional clearance. Couple of clients I've seen having linked contacts for the old accountant, tagging them and automating the emails there. Of course, the first email is going to go into draft because you no doubt have a lot of client specific requests to make, but certainly the chasing up, why not chase up old accountants automatically by email? Coming over to the left then, payment mandates. Now there's sort of two situations we see here, or a hybrid, and this does cater for the hybrid situation. So a lot of our customers will use the various popular quoting tools out there for either all or a proportion of their client base, and of course they are aiming to fully automate the process of taking that client from signing a quote to having money coming in via Go Cardless or another sort of payment gateway. Now let's have a look at the flow for this one, but we also have clients that will raise bills on completion of work. And we have clients that will have some of their clients that prefer one mechanism or the other, and it's a mixed bag. So our flow for this is really at the start confirming, are we going down the direct debit route, or are we sort of manual billing? The direct debit one then, if you have a tool that's doing lots of this, you could condense this down, but I do think the last one is good. Let's actually just check that with all this wonderful automation, let's have someone check that we have had some bill fire off and some money come in the door. And of course, if there are more manual elements here, you can have those as well. Okay, like I say, we'll progress through all of these in a minute. That brings me to the final one then, the in-house procedures, sort of like a catch-all for everything else that needs doing. And this is the bit that I've changed most on the new sort of version of this template. And I must admit, I was working with a number of practices at sort of fine-tuning this flow, and with their permission, I've sort of taken all their ideas and turned it into the new template. So let's have a look at it, because this one is the one that, not what you'll see here, but lots of things you'll want to put in here are actually more of a checklist. And I'll explain what that means and how Glide does that in a second. So jumping onto the in-house procedures, this is how this one looks now. And actually the bulk of the flow is more about helping people to get Glide set up properly, especially if you're doing lots of automated emails. If you have a look on the YouTube, I think we did a webinar about that about a month ago. So, you'll have seen on that one that it's important potentially to tag people in some situations. of course, it's pivotal within Glide to make sure you have activated the services that you've sold people and provided the first job date. So the in-house procedures now is more about making sure we've done those things and then linking in with any other tasks that might fire off the back of this, things like 64.8s, payroll schemes, VAT registration. So I'll explain how that all works in a second. And of course, you can add on your other things to here, but I think lots of things that you might choose to add on will actually sit better as a job field, more of a checklist. I'll explain those in a moment. So let's just have a look at what we're doing here. We're saying let's allocate staff. So if you do give clients a client manager or a client accountant, whatever the word is, let's make sure we've done that. Of course, we can be using traffic lights to insist on it being done before we progress if we wish. I mentioned the contact tags a moment ago, there that one is. Then we get in really to a series of questions. And this is the bit where, this is quite different to how this was before. And it's about asking the person that's setting up this new client, what do we need to do here? So confirm if incorporation is required. And either yes, we need to incorporate a client, not required, this isn't a company, or not required, the company already exists. Now, you'll see this pattern repeated. We've got gateway, we've got self-assessment, PAYE, everything. And of course, some of these will be not applicable, especially for, certain client types. But the crucial thing here is if ever we click agent authorization required, a 64.8 job will be created. Now, the 64.8 job resides on a different workflow system, another ad hoc one. And the reason for that is that, of course, it's not solely relevant at the new client onboarding stage. You might have existing clients who take on a new service or expand, and you need a job for them too. So it can't just be something that we consider new client onboarding. So the agent authorization will create a 64.8 job. Registration and authorization, that's for the scenario where, in the case of self-assessment, your new client is new to self-assessment and they need to register. So that will create both a tax registration job and a 64.8. Like I say, we'll look at this and see an example in a moment. Not applicable, of course, just means it's irrelevant. And this pattern is repeated for PAYE, CIS, VAT. And then we come back to a couple of final ones here, checking our client fields are complete, activating the workflows, and entering the first job dates. Of course, first job date you'll never need to do if you have a company number for accounts confirmation statements, but for most other recurring services that are based on a date, obviously not tax year stuff, you typically have to enter that first date. So it is an important part of the setup. And this last one then, finalize your job fields. This is where we come back to this idea of, here, by the way, those are my stages that we just looked through. I've not been too imaginative with the groupings. But down here we have job fields. Now, job fields, I'm sure all our customers will see job fields on most of their workflow systems. Now, typically there's one for the current job holder, which of course would change automatically, but it gives you the opportunity to go and change it manually. Often some of the positions that tend to vary, like preparer, might have one too. But actually you can put lots of stuff in your job fields. I've got a couple of interesting examples of that, but they're a bit off topic for this webinar. But here I'm actually making more of a checklist. Now, why might that be a good idea? Well, I've got 3 examples, again, from a customer that I was helping recently. So set up zero system, set up DEX system, register for 20% CIS. Now you can imagine you could have 100 here if you so wished. That would look a bit crowded on our current job card layout, but when we move to our new layout, that might well become a lot more practical. The reason these are better off as a job field is because with a process, you have to put it somewhere in the process and you can't do it earlier. Now, in reality, you might do it earlier, but you can't update it on Glide. That will annoy people. When you get to it, you have to do it. So for things that the reality is the team member can just do it whenever they want, for things like that, they're better off potentially as a job field. And, the benefit of job fields is we can come in and fill these out whenever we like. And I'll do those when we do this example job. Typically, the reason I then have a stage is that with your traffic light workflow actions, you can make any of these job fields mandatory at any time. So, you know, I've done it on the last stage, but you don't have to. We could have had some job fields, like maybe a little mini CIS checklist that you had to do if you wanted to click this one or this one, but you wouldn't have to do if you're clicking this one. You know, the traffic lights are quite flexible. But what I've gone for here is the idea that, right, if you want to get to the very end and for this job to be marked complete, we need to know that we've done everything. Therefore, my 3 job fields, you know, it's blocked if we've not done them. I've gone for the option of allowing either a date to mean it's done or a tick in the not applicable box. Okay, yeah, and I think they tend to be relevant here on the new client, on the in-house procedures. So let's actually go ahead then and progress through. I've got a sort of an accompanying sort of template for a dashboard here, which, you know, you could break this into a few dashboards. I've tried to lump it all into one. I've got all the progress monitors, you know, progress monitor, in-house procedures. Currently mine's just set to overall. Progress monitor AML, of course, referring here to the initial AML. We could have the recurring AML here as well. Professional clearance, payment mandate. So those are my 4 that come from my actual new client onboarding job. Then I've got ones for those other jobs that we'll see in a moment exist on a different workflow system, but might well be automatically created by our answers in the new client onboarding. That is my incorporation, and then my tax registrations. And by registrations, you know, I mean, with PAYE, of course, I'm talking about payroll scheme setup there, and authorisations. And what I've done on those is I've created 7 and 6 routes, and the routes are largely identical in terms of their stages and steps. Let's go and have a look at a couple of those. So if we have a look, for example, at the registrations, these, by the way, these haven't changed. You might have picked up these templates previously. So yeah, they're pretty simple, and I dare say some of our customers make them even more simpler. So getting the info, filling out the form, and getting it back, you know, telling the client. But they're all largely the same. So the reason we have the routes is simply so that based on the button, the answer you give on the new client, we'll create an appropriate job on that route. And it just gives you, as you can see, much better analysis here. And if you were to do any email automation, of course, they're all relevant to the route. So you can be referring to the right kind of tax, that sort of thing. So that's a pretty good idea, I think. Okay, now, of course, you know, you could have more stuff on the dashboard, your target dates, jobs held, if maybe you've got various people working on this. But what I like about this dashboard, especially, is the idea that imagine I'm running a practice of however many people, and maybe there's one person in charge of all of this or a couple. It tends to be concentrated within sort of a administration, practice management style roles, doesn't it? But often maybe with interaction with the sort of accountants as well. But if I'm in charge, basically, if I open this up, if it's all zeros, I'm very happy because absolutely all new client onboarding tasks are done. Any numbers mean we've got something to do. And I think it's good that everyone in the practice can have really easy visibility over that. Now, that's not a bad thing. If your practice is growing, you're going to have new clients. I guess even if it's not growing, you're going to have new clients because some will leave. And you know, I just think it's about giving the oversight, sharing visibility, and of course, as with all of our workflows, it really is controlled progression. You know, if a job gets to the end, and in this sense, they have 4 ends now, don't they? You know, we can finish 3 of these and still have 1 here. But if they get to the end, we can be reasonably happy that everything has been done because, you know, no one can go in and just say, right, yeah, final stage done, great, tick it off. You have to move through everything. And all the same concepts apply. You know, generally, I'd always advocate that any user can progress these jobs, but if you wanted to, you could lock down all of the buttons or maybe just the very last one to a particular team of people or something like that. Okay, now, and also, you know, what I should say just to finish off on the dashboards is I think this works just like this, but if you did want target dates, and I think they are always a good idea, you know, you can, there is also a widget, let's pop it on here, new client onboarding. upcoming targets. So you'll see that there's one for each of the 4 sections. Oh, do we have an overall one as well? Maybe we don't. Maybe here you're putting on the 4. So this probably says to me, if you've got 4 more widgets, you might have client onboarding brackets targets, as an additional dashboard. I'm just going to pop this one on for now. Let's just change that to overall. And the great thing about this, so currently on my template, when the job creates, so when the client creates, I simply set a 30 calendar day turnaround target on each of the 4 components. And what I like about this is, I was saying a moment ago, you just glance at this, and if there's numbers, there's stuff to do. If there's no numbers, it's great. Of course, you do need to know a bit more than that. If there's a load of numbers on here, but the client joined yesterday, that's to be expected. If there's a load of numbers on here and we haven't done the AML for a client that joined in April 2021, we really want to know about it. And just seeing the number on the progress monitor won't tell you. So there's 2 obvious tools to have here. First of all, the target dates, and of course a couple of reminders on things there. Best to have them automated. I think that's really sensible on this workflow. There's no reason for these to be manually entered. You can either do it granular, so AML info's in, let's do a risk assessment in 2 working days, or you can do big picture like me, 30-day turnaround idea. But either way, so long as you've got one target date on your job card on a stage that hasn't been done. So if we look at mine, we'll see that I've got my 30 days there, literally 30 calendar days on in-house procedures. Professional clearance, 30 calendar days. What else have we got? 30 days, I've put it on the wrong one, but I've got it on the payment mandate. And actually AML, I've said 5, because that seems to me like the first thing I would do. And of course, as we said before, we could hide these or block these. You could even on those 3 have a stage saying pending AML. And then when you click the AML is done, it could auto progress all 3 of these. For those of you that haven't had sort of multiple subsystems before, they can interact with one another in ways that jobs on separate workflow systems, even for the same client, can't. Anyway, back to what we were speaking about a moment ago. To know whether a number is a problem or not, or just the normal course of business, you really need either your target dates. So if you imagine, I've got this new client on just before the webinar started, so I've got 30 calendar days to go. When I log in tomorrow, if I've not done it, it'll be 29, 28. That's all about getting that visibility on the horizon. We want lots of notice for everyone, so they're not sort of stressed out when things suddenly pop up. If there was that AML from a year ago, this would now be obviously not the AML one would be minus 365. It's going to stick out like a sore thumb. Your second layer of defense, should you require it, and I kind of don't think you would with the dashboard or the target dates, but your second layer of defense would be the email alerts. Of course, they can check the other webinar on YouTube just recently for how we do those, or obviously get in touch with any queries. But an example there, and of course here we're talking about helping you, so this is internal email alerts. You could say, right, if we get to within 2 days of my target date, ping me an email. Or if we get to 50 days after client created and there's no, I don't know, no AML, I keep coming back to the AML, I don't know, it's the scary one, or no professional clearance, send me an email. So you've always got that email to fall back on. And actually, I think there's a number of opportunities within this flow to have external emails as well, whether that's sending a direct debit link or whether it's emailing the old accountant, or maybe on the in-house procedures, we're wrapping up. If we click to say we need a new VAT scheme, maybe it triggers sending an email with a link to a form or something like that to gather data. Okay, that's enough talking about the dashboard. Like I say, your person doing this would want this, but it's also great for other people in the practice to have it and to be aware. Let's actually go ahead now and move through the job. The whole idea of having this broken up into 4 is that we don't know which one will move first or next. They are independent. Of course, you might choose to do them in a certain order, but I'm just going to go through them one at a time, actually, for sheer simplicity. So the AML, like I said, nothing too fancy going on here. ID requested, chased, received, risk assessment complete. I'm sure there's more we could do there. And, you know, in the future, you know, Glide is still very much about sharing visibility, sort of single source of the truth on job progress and making sure things are done. You know, in the future, we'll certainly be looking to see if we can link that up with any of the many tools out there that are helping you verify people. Okay, so that's popped in my actual dates down there. You know, once I get, you know, my target date is in the last one, so that target date would only disappear when that's done. Professional clearance, let's say yes, we do need that. We've got consent, requested, probably got the chasing. There we go, we've got the chasing. Of course, that chasing could be done by an email every so many days or months, and the emails now can click the buttons for you. So they'd be putting your actual dates in. I won't bother with missing info, I'll just say, yeah, it's all wonderful. That's those two bits done. So if I go back to my dashboard and hit refresh, I think this is my only job in the whole system. So what we can see now, professional clearance zeros, we're all done. AML zeros, but we've still got payment mandate there, hasn't even got off the ground yet, and we've still got the in-house. So let's move on now to payment mandate. Now the manual billing, you know, that's my slightly less interesting option. So I'm going to go down the direct debit here. Sending the form, of course, that could happen automatically or might well be done in other pieces of software. We've got the ability to chase here, and again, another opportunity for email alerts, which would push that button for you. It's completed. And this is the one that, like I say, is a great fail-safe. Let's actually confirm we've had some money in before we allow this job to complete. And the final one I've put in here is Glide fee info populated. You know, I'm not sure how widespread knowledge is of the fee info within the Glide customers, but that's, you know, for me, it ties in with the whole payment thing here, because if you're charging people, you know what you're charging them, you could put it in the fee info. If I just open this in a new tab, I'll explain very briefly what I mean by that. The fee info tab is where we could record our fee relationships, and it gives us some nice reporting, both on the fees report and also in the query editors, things like annualized value of clients, that sort of thing, projected invoicing, etc. Okay, so that's that one done. So as you can see, we've now got 3 bits complete. The job as a whole is only considered complete when it's all done. And this brings us perhaps to the more, you know, sort of interesting part of the 4, the most interesting one, the in-house procedures. It might be that in reality, this one progresses first, but who knows? Right, so staff allocated, you know, not rocket science here. We're just going to tick to say we've done that. Of course, we could be, we probably be sensible to add in some traffic lights to mandate that that's happened. I haven't bothered with that on the template here. That's that one done. Contacts tagged. You know, like I say, currently we don't have a traffic light to say, is there a contact tagged with this tag? But that's certainly something I'll be thinking about, because I like the idea within here of saying, okay, if you're saying you've got VAT active, we know that we use the tag VAT on that flow, so let's force you to have a VAT tag. Don't quite have that at the moment, but let's press on and get to our first one of these more questionnaire style stages. So do we need to incorporate? So here, if we say yes, incorporation required, I think from memory, I've got 2 things happening. I've got a incorporation job. Now that was a standalone workflow system being created. And I think I've got a corporation tax 64.8 being done. So let's, first of all, on our dashboard, let's hit refresh, just make sure we've got the latest here. We can see on incorporation, we've got no jobs. And on our registrations, we've got, it looks like no jobs. So just to check this is working. And I literally did this just before the webinar and I haven't tested it yet. So I have my fingers crossed here. Let's say incorporation required. So that was my answer. I'm on the next stage now. If we go back to our dashboard and hit refresh, what we should see is that we've got an incorporation job here now. We'll have a look at it in a second. And I think we've got an authorization for corporation tax here. Don't think you register for CT. I think it happens automatically. So I haven't got one of those being created. So yeah, we've just got the authorization there. So let's just have a quick glance at this job. Let's go to the job card. So it's dead simple, and it's, you know, it's on a standalone workflow system, because like I say, your existing client of 20 years might suddenly incorporate, and we'd need this flow, so it has to be separate. But it can do its own things. You know, it can have different job holders, different emails, different target dates. It's fully independent. Let's go back on this tab to the dashboard. Gateway, you know, I don't think we actually create any jobs here. This is more of a checking we've done it. Gateway, I'm just going to say gateway already exists. So consider self-assessment. This now moves into the pattern for all the taxes, whereby we have agent authorization required. So the tax already exists on the client, but you as an agent can't get in. So that would do the authorization, the 64.8 job. Or we've got registration and authorization required. So here's where the client, and I appreciate, you know, you wouldn't be doing incorporation and this one, you'd be clicking not applicable on one, but I'm just assuming for my example that everything's potentially relevant. Registration and authorization, that would start a job to register someone for, you know, self-assessment and to get you authorization. So let's go ahead and click that one, and we'll just take a look at our dashboard, hit refresh. Okay, so now we've got, what did we just say we've got here? Self-assessments. We've got one job. We can see that there's just a small number of stages that goes through, and we've got one over here. So those jobs could still be live, and, you know, you might have finished your client onboarding, you know, which I think is fine, because you've still got your numbers here. You know, I think that's okay. Let's go back. So POA, you know, I won't do this thing now where I go and refresh the dashboard every time, but it's the same setup here. Authorization, set up schemes, a payroll scheme and authorization. Let's do that one. Same with CIS. I'm going to say we've got literally everything going on here. Same with VAT. And then we're back to a couple of final ones. So glide, contact and client data complete. That's just a reminder to people that all your client fields, you know, maybe if you're capturing things like date of birth, NI number, etc., etc. Let's check they're all done. Just on that note, I just want to highlight something that's sort of missing and we'll be adding soon, but your traffic lights for fields. Traffic lights can block when your job fields are not complete. We'll see that in a minute. They can't yet block on client fields, but I think we should be able to add that, you know, relatively easily. So, you know, I'll hopefully get that in soon and probably update the template accordingly. So activate workflows and enter first job dates. Now, this is, you know, this is really important. So why not, you know, incorporate it into the new client onboarding flow? You know, that's whereby on the client card, I've got a few of mine defaulting on, but, you know, say if that returns is actually relevant, of course, there's two things you have to do: get it to active and pop in the first date. Let's do the end of May. Okay, so that's really just about reminding the team member that that's an important thing to do. Okay, then we're on this final one. Now, of course, you could incorporate other things in there, but I think most other things that would fit into in-house, realistically, when you analyze it, could be done in any order. They don't really a process you're moving through, although there's no harm in putting them in as a process, just means people would tick them off in that order. But we are now saying, look, you've got several job fields here. You need to actually do those, please. And I've got all mine set up so that either I can put in an actual date, which one's it asked me to do first? Zero system. So I could put in an actual date to say it's done, or I could have ticked the tick box to say not applicable. So now it's saying, you know, do this one, please. I'm going to say it's not applicable. And now it's saying do the next one. We'll say not applicable to that. And then we're allowed to say we've finalized it. So you could have quite a number of things there that's sort of acting like a traditional checklist with a list of things, and you initial it, and, you know, once you've done them all, you can consider it done. This is, you know, sort of forcing you to finish the checklist before the job drops off the radar here, because currently if we hit refresh, we'll see that this job is stuck here, finalize all job fields. So it is a like sort of keeping visibility until we know everything's done, even if those things are the job fields. So we click that button, and, you know, that's my 4 bits here all done. And yeah, you know, what other sort of ideas just sort of pop into my mind about new client onboarding? Well, a couple of things you could do here. You could have a workflow system, sort of like I've seen this a few times, sort of like checking in with the client. You know, often when you take on a new client, I suppose if you're quite involved with their bookkeeping, you might have regular contact. But if it is more of a year end or you know, tax return client, you could have a flow set up to do a sort of 6 months later, let's get in touch with the customer, that sort of thing. So that's something else I've seen. But yeah, I think we've only taken up half of our allotted time here. So I'm pondering whether I can talk about anything else relevant. I think anything else would start to stray into different topics and should be on a different webinar. But yeah, you know, that's let's just hit refresh there. We'll see that target date has now gone. So I think that probably concludes everything I was keen to share with you today. Just to reiterate a couple of things that I would have said at the start that some of you might have missed. First of all, this is a new template. So if someone goes and creates a Glide system now, they'll see this one. But if you're an existing Glide customer, you won't do. But I can put it in your system. Just ping me a message and say the new client template. Can I have that, please? It will, of course, be a different workflow system to your existing one. So, you know, there's no magic way to mix them in. But of course, with your existing one, you could take on board some of these ideas, and more than happy to help as ever with that process. Yeah, I think that's about it. I'm just going to check, obviously, any questions. Yes, Jane, absolutely, you can. I will get that on your system later today. Let me just make a little note there. Oh, right, yeah. Thank you, Jane. Let me just write that down. Cool. So Jane's just asked, how do I get multiple dashboards set up? Right. A really good question. Thank you. In Glide, click on your name, click on profile and click on options. And here you'll see all of your dashboards. You can add another dashboard. Once it's created, you can give it a name. And then as you've done that, you'll see them building up in a list here below your name in the drop down. The one that's at the top is the one that you'll see when you log in. It's the one that you'll see if you click on the Glide icon. Just whilst we're talking about dashboards, also be aware that in the config, if you're a super user, you've got dashboard management. So you can absolutely, all dashboards that exist in Glide are shown down here. You know, I'm the only user on this system and I only have 2 dashboards, but say if I had 100 users or just one colleague, I could go save as template, call this onboarding perhaps. And then what I can do here is I can, okay, there is only one user, but I could either select a target user to give it to, and typically you'd put it in their next available empty dashboard, or they can say a slot number that would delete or overwrite the existing dashboard in there. Or you can say add template to all users but me. And target user would also contain teams. So quite often it's useful to have teams set up. If you want like 3 people to have a dashboard, but not 6, just put them in a team and then you can send it to them. Or for 3, I guess you could just choose them one by one. But yeah, that's how you'd set up another dashboard, Jane. And I think the general pattern I'm seeing, I must admit, this overall summary, I've not really done this. This was just the default one that pops up, and I do need to sort of change what's on here. But an overall summary is a good one to have. And then it's definitely a great idea. I haven't really done it, but in the way that I've got client onboarding, it's a good idea, I think, to have a dashboard almost for every service or group of services. You know, you might group payroll, P11D, payroll year end together, but I'll just do an example here of what, if someone said to me, can you create me a VAT dashboard? This is what I'd put on it, because actually the client onboarding one is a bit different. I think it looks good just with progress monitors, and there's 7 of them. That fills out your screen. So you almost need another one for your upcoming targets, but it's different with things like that. You can comfortably fit everything you need on the screen. So first of all, ignore these ones at the very top, because they're pulling in everything. You know, upcoming targets means all of your targets, VAT, onboarding, accounts, everything. Same for deadlines, jobs held. So when you're doing a more specific dashboard, find the sections. Here's VAT returns, and I'd always have a progress monitor. Now, it's by stage or by group. Generally, stage is best. If you've got loads of stages, what you'll see is that you can put them in groups, and the groups one then gives you a more concise view. But you only need that if you've got tons of stages. Let's add some more. Oops, what have I done there? Highlighted it all. So coming down here, you've got your progress monitor, table or graph. Table's best, but for tax return stuff, so tax returns, P11Ds, ATED, ERS, all that sort of thing, the graph works nicely because you of course, you just have a number to do in the tax year and you can see it going down. Deadline monitor, definitely, if there are deadlines, have that one in. Upcoming targets, yes, I totally recommend having target dates, and that's the widget to keep an eye on them. And then outstanding deadlines, that one means all deadlines. This one is, you then have one widget per deadline. So if you had like that filing, that payment, you could have a widget just looking at those. You can also just have a list of jobs you're linked to, or all jobs. The one that I definitely recommend is jobs held, because especially if you're in a team environment, that's the one that tells you these are the jobs that are literally with you. So whereas here, that, this is overall, everyone in my business will see the same numbers in here on overall. And of course, these can be filtered down to linked. So that would just show me, say, if I was a client manager and I managed 50 out of 500 clients, that would just show me information about the 50. So most widgets are like that, overall linked or held, but I don't recommend held because definitely have the jobs held widget, either the global one or these ones on these dashboards, because these ones are, like I say, if you're a member of the team, you see a job in your jobs held, you can be assured that no one else is seeing it in their jobs held. It is effectively your Glide to-do list, in this case for VAT returns. It will be ordered by target date, and I think it's really useful. So, this would be bigger because, of course, these are all empty, but you can imagine you might have sort of 10 jobs in here, a handful in here. So this would then start to fill out the screen quite nicely. But as I say, you could even fit below here, maybe VAT registrations or VAT inquiries, bit of spare real estate there. But yeah, that's sort of a whiz through the dashboard stuff. Thank you, Jane, for asking. But yeah, we still have plenty of time if anyone has any other questions. I'll perhaps, if we have a few minutes silence, perhaps we'll just end this one early. Like I say, it was, I always block out an hour, but this was relatively simple, what we needed to look through today. And like I said before, we are recording the webinar, so I'll be getting that up on our YouTube. So if anyone's missed it, Oh, Jane, did you raise your hand? No, all good, cool. Yeah, like I say, if you think, oh, this could be relevant for a colleague, very soon you will see that. Okay, question, is there a list of workflows? Yes, actually, I have got a list of about, I think, 60 workflows now, where there's either a template in the Glide template system already, or I have one just saved on my machine here. So I'll ping that to you, Jane, and for everyone else, I've been conscious recently it'd be a useful document to share with everyone. So I'll find a way of doing that. Perhaps we'll have like a library page in the system. But yes, Jane, I can ping that to you. No problem at all. Okay. Right, Michelle, could the yellow color on the onboarding workflow be the darker? Right, thank you, Michelle. So Michelle's just pointing something out in relation to the coloring. So let's go and have a look at how we might better change that. So on the job card here, I think Michelle's point is that, yeah, there's sort of a lack of contrast here, and I completely accept that point. That is hard to read. Okay, now perhaps we ought to have a way of automatically checking the contrast. But what you can do, Michelle, right away is if you come into your config and edit workflow systems and find the new client one here, it's actually over in subsystems, okay? And if we edit, which one was it? It was payment mandate. If we edit this, now, a couple of things to mention if you're in here, definitely leave these as active all for your ad hoc flows. Okay, that's the setting that's required there. But what we're actually talking about here, there's two things. There's two components on the screen. You've got your, oh, where's it gone? Okay, let me just find it again. You've got your, you've got this bit at the top, and then you've got your list of stages, the bit down below. You can choose the color for both of those. And it's actually here, stage bar color, deadline bar color. I don't know why that says stage there. And it's a list of, to be fair, a sort of a finite list of choices. In some of our more modern color-based functionality, it's a palette. This one, you've kind of just got to pick a color. But of course, a number of these colors, we can even see from this list that actually Starship's a bit tricky to read there. So you could go sunset orange, just perhaps do the same down here. I think it's good to have them both set the same. So it's just one color per subsystem. That will hopefully, if I hit refresh here, okay, I've accidentally picked the same one as we had up there. That's not a good idea. Let's go for a different one. But you get, yeah, that's sort of the way to do that, Michelle. Probably just a bit of, let's go for Highland, a bit of experimenting to find something that's easier on the eye in terms of contrast. There we go. That's 4 different colors again. And I totally agree with you. That's far better contrast, far easier to read. Cool. Okie doke. I will hold on a bit longer just in case there's any other questions coming in, or just any questions on anything. And if not, we'll bring this one to a close. Yeah, like I was saying, just to avoid a silence here, there's a couple more of these coming up, and actually a couple of meeting ones where they're not a Zoom webinar, where they're actually a meeting, so we're all in the room together, and that's for more of a open chat about this new job card we're building, where I'm gonna talk about everything that's gonna be different about it, and hopefully get some ideas coming back at us from the users. It'd be the first time we've changed it in quite a number of years, so it's really important to us that we get it right. So yeah, what I'll do soon is I'll put an upcoming events link in one of these menus, because currently I don't think there's any way for you to know about these unless I sort of mention them to you, or we pop it on the news as you log in. So keep an eye out for that one. Okay, well, we've not had any more questions in there. Obviously, as ever, feel free to get in touch with us on the phone, on the blue button widget, or just emailing your account manager. And of course, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions at any time. But I think we'll call it a day here. Hopefully that's been useful. Certainly, from, as I said, this is the one that's typically the most complicated when setting up any new customer. So hopefully these changes we made to the template will be useful for you in your business. But thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. And I'm going to end the webinar now. So cheers. See you all soon. Cheers, Jane. Thank you. Cheerio.